into it.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. Well,
speaking of songs, we are going to talk with Marshall Chess, the son of Chess Records co-founder Leonard Chess. There's a terrific new album out called New Moves. We're going to talk about that and some of the history of Chess Records and some of the things that Marshall is into now. So that's all coming up. Stay with us at WGN. Steve King and Johnnie Putman at WGN Radio. Boom, boom, out go the lights. When we were first listening to that, the first thing I thought is, this feels to me, it gives me that same funky blue light down in the basement up on the orange crate feeling that I got from some of the early Chess records. And there's a reason for that, because this is from an extraordinary album called The Chess Project.
It is New Moves. And with us right now is music royalty. The man has a name that everyone in Chicago should know. Marshall Chess is our guest, and he's really behind this whole new concept of New Moves. Marshall, thank you for joining us on WGN Radio.
Great to be with you, my old hometown. Nowhere better I'd rather be.
Well, that's why I said everyone in Chicago should know the name Chess, because, of course, he's son of Leonard Chess, the co-founder of Chicago's Chess Records, and
you did that little thing when you were the president of Rolling Stones Records. So you've kind of
know your way around.
Know your way around.
Yeah,
I've been around. I'm 82 now, man. I've been around.
Oh, God bless you. Well, again, we want to talk about you, but we also want to talk about New Moves. Love that first cut that we played from the album. Now, this actually was an idea that you had long before COVID hit. Is that right, Marshall?
Oh, God. Well, one of my first jobs, it wasn't a job. I got hired at Chess Records. I was born into it.
Right, yeah.
Born in the circus. That's what I always used to say. So I began working, very young at 13. I was always around. My dad was a workaholic. Loved being there. In 1967, when albums were first hitting the market, we had put out a live Muddy Waters album called Muddy Waters at Newport Jazz Festival. And we started seeing sales from Boston. I remember my uncle said, "What's going on? There's not that many people in Boston. We shouldn't be selling it." We traced it down to white college kids who'd gone to the Newport Jazz Festival. And we saw, wow, there's a whole new audience. So one of my first jobs at Chess Records was to expand the blues, which was primarily for black people at that time, to this new white audience. So I began making classic compilations, the real folk blues, more real folk blues, super blues. And it evolved in 1969, the last year I was at Chess, before it was sold to probably my most famous album that I made, Electric Mud, with Muddy Waters, which was a psychedelic take on the blues to bring in this new audience. So, I've always had this idea of wanting to bring new people to the magic of the blues. It's such a special art form, and I just thought that was always my job, and I never stopped, and I hope this one brings in some new people.
Yeah.
I want to make an odd comparison, but as I was listening to this album, New Moves, it struck me as having elements of some of the best of Chess blues, but also some of the best of an album that you were involved with that is one of my all-time favorites, The Rotary Connection.
Yeah.
It's like it has. There are blues roots, but there's some wonderful psychedelia, rotary connection stuff.
Yeah.
I love what you did with this.
It's me, you know. I mean, it's my. I think I produced over 31 albums. I figured it out, and you know, I'm really like, you know, an artist friend of mine said, you're really like an artist more than a musician. You come up with ideas and you make them out. And I use music as my form because that was my life at the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Rotary was my first real experimental move. I was part of that psychedelic whole generation. It affected me greatly. And I decided that was the era when people were having bad trips, jumping off the roofs, taking LSD. And I said, you know, there's a market for a soft psychedelic album to help people out. Put some headphones on them, bring them out of a bad trip. That's how that idea generated, you know, and I went ahead and made it. I'm glad you liked it. That was my first real experimental record.
Well, how does it feel to you to know that something that you did, and I'm going to stay with Rotary Connection for a second, something that you did all those years ago still sounds that good today? You can still put on your headphones, get into it, and it's a wonderful album experience.
You know, it makes you feel great. I mean, you know, especially when people like you saying you loved it. Come on. Every time someone tells me they got off or loved some piece of music that I had something to do with, you love it, of course. That's what you want more than anything. Your ego loves it. You love it. But more than anything, I love spreading the roots of my father and uncle. Because, well, you know, what they did in Chicago, man, nothing other than maybe Carl Sandburg was as creative. And at South Michigan Avenue, all the great music, not just blues and Rotary Connection, but jazz, the first black comedy, the first black spiritual religious stuff. Amazing creative stuff out of Chicago from that little building on Michigan Avenue.
I'll never forget, back in the day before I got into radio in the 60s, I was involved with a lot of bands, and there was one day that I actually got to go and record at 2120 South Michigan, and I was just walking into that building. There really was a special vibe about that building, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was a magic place, man. It was music. You know, I can remember it. I loved going there. I started going there as very young because it was, like I said, it was like going to the circus. The characters. There was always music. We recorded all day long, every day. Chess made so many records that were never released, looking for ones that sounded the best. It was really a creative factory. That's what was so fascinating about it. Yeah, it was an amazing place. You know, all the great, that's how I met the Rolling Stones. Mm-hmm. In 1964, they contacted me. That was they got their name from Muddy Waters' record, a record called Rolling Stone. Yep. And they were in awe. They thought if they recorded at the Chess Studios, it would sound like a Chess record. And of course, they learned that it had nothing to do with it. It did have something to do with it, but it was the brilliance of the artist. And actually, at Chess, I remember very clearly that's where they sketched out Satisfaction. That's one of their most famous records.
Really?
And they went on to finish it in L.A. on that same tour. Yeah, I can remember. They were the first guys I ever saw with long hair. And Brian Jones, one of the original Rolling Stones, I was driving them back in 1964. I had a 64 Porsche. I had made money. My first albums were selling. I bought this. I had my first car, $180 a month. And I got to a corner. Brian Jones, remember, he had that shoulder-length hair?
Yeah.
And we got to a red light, and a bunch of guys at the corner started screaming, "Homo, homo, homo," and pointing at him. Remember, that's what they called gay people.
Sure.
Yeah, homos. And I'll never forget that, man. He said, "What's that about, man?" Oh. And, that was his experience of gay rights in Chicago.
In the 70s, when you were with Rolling Stone Records as the president, you actually you worked with the Stones then. Didn't you do Sticky Fingers with them?
Yeah, that was my first record I did with them, yeah. I did Sticky Fingers all the way, Exile on Main Street, Black and Blue. Yeah.
Wow.
I spent 7 years with them. It was a great experience. They were like a chess band. First thing I noticed when I started making during the Sticky Fingers recording was they had that same magic of becoming as one. You see, these chess blues bands, at least the main band we used on so many of the hits, that was before multi-track recording where you could connect anything. And the band had to lock together. The magic came was 5 or 7 guys became one. And then that's when magic comes in music. Live music is fabulous. That's why people love it so much. And when that happens, it's an amazing thing. It happened a lot at chess, and it definitely happened with the Rolling Stones. I noticed it. Sometimes they'd play 3 or 4 days in a row, and then one night the magic would happen, and they would do 5 cuts, instrumentally. It would just lock together. So, they had that same ability, that magic.
See, you're singing my song because I love the days, and I'm all for modern technology. I get it. I understand it. But I love the days when a recording was just that. You put a group of people in the studio, they played a song, and you recorded that performance, and that was what was released. And there was just a different feel about that kind of recording session.
Well, it could be dirty then. And sometimes,
you couldn't correct the mistake. I'll tell you, my first time, my dad was recording a blues session, and he said, "Go up to the studio. I have to go to the bank." I said, "Go up to the studio. What am I supposed to do?" He said, "Just tell him to take another one." I said, "What?" He said, "Tell him to take another one, even if it's 14 times till I get back. If you don't tell him to take another one, they're just going to sit around gossiping." And one of those 14, and they'd be locked together and be great. And that was my first lesson. Do it again. Take 1, take 2, take 4, do it again.
Just keep doing it. I love that story. We're talking with Marshall Chess. Marshall, sit tight. We'll come back with you. Marshall is music royalty, honestly. Again, he's got a new album. We're going to tell you all about New Moves and how it came about right here on WGN.
My baby give me a high temperature, yeah. My baby give me a high temperature, too warm to stay alive. My baby give me a high temperature. My baby give me a high temperature. My baby give me a high